I will never miss.
The man who never misses. Today we're going to review Tywin, a hero that is very rarely talked about, but is probably one of the best cleave initiators in the game. And early on in the game, he was very popular. No one really talks about him anymore, but he's still really strong. And to be honest, before I got Oxlots, he carried me through PvP very hard. So as always, skills first. S1, very basic, but at max molas has a 75% chance to dispel one buff. With his exclusive equipment, he can dispel up to 2 buffs, and he's actually pretty hilarious against heroes like Kayron because they could immortality, and then if you get lucky, he'll just strip it, and then Kayron dies. His S2 is awesome. It gives himself and a teammate that you select increased attack and increased crit chance for 2 turns, and also boosts their combat readiness for 30%. So you can see why this is a cleaver's wet dream. A lot of times you have to sacrifice offensive stats on your cleaver because you need them to crit, so you need to get them to at least 90% crit. With Tywin, you can build them to only have 50% crit because the crit chance buff will give them another 50%, so you can really stack their attack and crit damage so that they hit for monstrous damage. And I did this before myself. I used to run my Judge Kisei with only 50% crit because I always ran her with Tywin before I had Oxlots, and that meant that my Judge Kisei hit a lot harder than the average Judge Kisei, and I would one-shot just about anything. His S3, his famous never miss move. This time he said with all my might, but sometimes he says he'll never miss, which is the best one, and it has at max mola, or +5 rather, a 100% chance to decrease defense, AOE, decrease defense. That is amazing. 100% defense breaks are highly coveted because you have a really high chance of defense breaking their entire team. It also increases defense of the caster for 3 turns. Some people wonder about this, but it's actually very important because you can cast this and survive ML Ken and Charles counters pretty easily. But the main thing is the soul burn. The soul burn grants an extra turn. Now, why is that so important? It's because it sets up perfectly with cleave teams because you can AoE defense break their entire team and then immediately get another turn, and then use Commanding Shout to increase your primary cleaver's attack, crit chance, and CR bump them to the front so they get the next turn. And you'll see that in action in the arena section. It is insane. It allows for some really crazy high damage setups. So without further ado, let's get to the build real quick. So how do you build Tywin? My Tywin is pretty nubby, but that's okay because he's just a cleave setup initiator. A lot of heroes have options on sets. For Tywin, it's mandatory that you go speed, immunity. Why do you need immunity? Because he has an extra turn mechanic. You want to set up and then do the S2. You don't want for him to S3 and then get counterattack provoked or something that prevents him from doing the S2. So always run him on immunity and speed. You need him to be fast because he's a cleave setup hero. He needs to go early and then bump up your primary cleaver. Now you can build him really tanky and have some kind of weird bruiser comp for him, but that's not how most people run him. My gear is pretty bad, but ideally you'd want at least like 1200 defense, 20k HP, at least 210 speed, and really high effectiveness. You need effectiveness because you need those defense breaks to land. For exclusive equipment, I chose the S1 one. It dispels 1 more buff when using Sword Storm, so you can dispel up to 2 buffs. His second one I think is pretty useless. It decreases the cooldown of his S3 by 1 if you dispel a buff. I think that's too RNG to be reliable. And his S3 one, you can use it. It gives him an extra 20% CR boost when you use Commanding Shout. In a cleave team, that's pointless because if you get this off cooldown twice, it probably means you lost anyway. For artifacts, Aureus and Adamant are solid options. I run him on Bastion because I used to run him with Judge Kisei, and the Bastion barrier is pretty thick, and it's kind of like an FCC barrier. It really helped because it helped my Judge Kisei survive ML Ken counters, so I would still hit ML Ken teams with Tywin Judge Kisei because this let her survive. Also, the other thing is, ML Ken teams usually aren't scary because with defense break they get one-shotted anyway. But that's the gist of building Tywin. High speed, high effectiveness, standard initiator, and then health defense are kind of optional, but you want enough to be able to survive like a Ken counter or a Charles counter, because you need to make sure that he doesn't die as soon as he uses his S3. But 20k HP, 1200 defense, that's usually more than sufficient to help him survive. All he has to do is not die before the S2. So now for everyone's favorite part, let's showcase what Tywin does in PvP. So what is Tywin's role in Arena? Let's go ahead and try it on this team. This comp is one that I used to use months ago. It's actually a very, very powerful comp. So I'm going to show you how Tywin obliterates this team. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and push them back and try and remove these barriers. Not going to bother burning it. Blip. Little Elbrus action, no big deal. Now this is what makes Tywin unique. So if you soul burn his S3, he gets an extra turn. So he has a 100% chance to defense break. He'll probably miss on Charles, but for everyone else, if they don't resist, they will get defense broken. And then he gets another turn, and he can boost someone else's attack and crit hit chance, and give them combat readiness. So you can set up some really, really devastating cleaves with Tywin. Now I want you to see this Judge Kisei damage. Look, we got 4 defense breaks, and you know what? This is already game over. There's literally, if you get 4 defense breaks, there is no team in the world, doesn't matter if they have all SSS imprints and the best gear in the game, they cannot survive this. This is going to be hilarious. I think the thing you want to watch is look how much damage Fallen Cecilia will take. Look at Fallen Cecilia because she has the damage sharing from Seaside and stuff. Let's see this damage. Blip, blip, blip. FCC gets hit for 30k. And they're done. And this is why Tywin is so good. A single unit that can provide a 100% defense break, attack buff, crit buff, and a 30% CR push. Insane for setting up. He's probably the best cleaving setup in the game between him and Oxlots. Oxlots gives him a better push, but Tywin gives defense break and crit buff. So it's kind of a wash. But yeah, I think Tywin's very underutilized. He's definitely one of the best cleave setup heroes in the game. Alright, so let's sum Mr. Tywin up. Is he good? As a cleaver, absolutely, he is God tier. So on arena offense, S tier. He can set up some ridiculous cleaves, and at legend rating, he still works, and he actually works better than some other teams because you actually need the defense break to cleave some of these super tanky stall teams. On arena defense, F, absolutely useless, don't use him. Guild Wars offense, A, he's a little worse in Guild Wars offense because you need your DPS to be a little fast still. Oxlots is more reliable because Tywin works better in 4-team setups. Oxlots is good because he gives the attack buff and 100% CR boost by himself. Tywin only gives a 30%, so you can't bring like a 110 speed DPS. They'll still get turn cut if Tywin's boost is the only one you have. But still very solid. A common team I used to run was like Basar, Tywin, Judge Kisei. If your DPS is like 150 speed, they should still get the next turn. But because of that, I'm going to give him an A on Guild Wars offense. Guild Wars defense, like a D. He's still pretty bad, very easy to work around. He doesn't have a strip, although some people run like cheesy cleave defense teams like Basar, Tywin, BBK. But again, Tywin will not soul burn on defense, so their cleaver has to be fast enough to go next. So, still pretty crappy on Guild Wars defense. In RTA, he doesn't show up very often, and there's a reason for that. It's because you need to bring a different attack bumper and CR booster than Tywin, because he's too easy to ban out in a cleave setup. If you bring like a Tywin cleave, they'll just ban Tywin. If you bring both Oxalots and Tywin, they'll let you keep them both, and then you kind of are in a weird position. So he's not that great in RTA as far as I can tell yet. He might be good if you build him really tanky, is kind of like a damage mitigating, dispelling, counter defense breaker. So I might experiment with that one day, but I will say RTA is questionable. I have never seen him above challenger tier yet, but that doesn't mean he's not usable. I just don't have enough information. If you don't have, or if you do have any questions rather about how to use Tywin, leave them in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the PvP section particularly, and let me know what hero you want reviewed next. Thanks for watching. Till next time, guys. Peace out.